Hillsborough Television News Breaks, connecting you to county events.
Welcome to the Iraq Veterans Memorial Dedication Ceremony. At this time, if Mark Goujon and Frank Strom from the County Center would come forward. They're going to receive the proclamation from the Hillsborough County Board of County Commissioners.
On behalf of our Board of County Commissioners, our County Administrator Mike Merrill, our Deputy County Administrator Sharon Subadan, it is our honor and my pleasure to read this proclamation from our Board of County Commissioners today. Whereas it has been 10 years since military forces invaded Iraq, may we never forget the men and women from Florida who sacrificed their lives to defend our freedom and to keep America safe. And whereas the loss of many brave souls from Hillsborough County while serving during Operation Iraqi Freedom and Operation New Dawn is a tragedy, we continue to grieve as a community alongside with the families of these heroes. And whereas we also honor those who lost their lives after active duty as a result of injuries they sustained in Iraq. We will forever remember and be grateful to them and to their families for their unquestioned valor and incredible sacrifice. And whereas Hillsborough County honors the memory of its Iraq veterans for their tireless dedication to the safety of others and giving of their lives in the service of this great country. And whereas on December 14, 2013, a permanent Iraq Veterans Memorial will be unveiled at Hillsborough County Veterans Memorial Park to honor the county residents who made the ultimate sacrifice during the invasion of Iraq. And whereas the Hillsborough County Veterans Council and Veterans Museum and Park Committee continue to honor our veterans by co-hosting the Iraq Veterans Dedication Ceremony on this day, and whereas all veterans will always be acknowledged, as well as today's soldiers who continue to fight the brave fight to defend our freedom. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the Board of County Commissioners, Hillsborough County, Florida, does hereby recognize December 14, 2013 as Iraq Veterans Memorial Day in Hillsborough County and requests that all residents join in honoring this day as a gesture to recognize what our soldiers and families have sacrificed. Executed this 4th day of December 2013, Board of County Commissioners. Thank you.
But it's great to be here, surrounded by many veterans, patriots, and most importantly, the family members of those young men and women who made the ultimate sacrifice in the quest to bring peace and security to those in need. Here with us no longer, but obviously never forgotten. The Hillsborough County Veterans Memorial Park is a testament to the fact that we have some of the most patriotic Americans right here in the Tampa Bay area, whose sons and daughters have answered and continue to answer their nation's call to service. Operation Iraqi Freedom started on March 20th, 2003 and ended with Operation New Dawn on 15 December 2011. It's 8 years, 8 months, 3 weeks, and 4 days of combat endured by our young American service members, all volunteers, part of that less than 1% of us in uniform. We removed a ruthless dictator, Saddam Hussein, from power. We overwatched elections that formed a new government. We tampered down al-Qaeda and other extremist groups. We set the conditions to allow the Iraqi people to enjoy a sense of freedom and peace that most had never known. Over 1,500,000 troops served rotationally through Iraq, many of us on multiple deployments, most of us popping in between Iraq and Afghanistan. And up to 170,000 served at our peak during operations in 2007 during the surge. During Operation New Dawn, which began on September 1st, 2010, 50,000 troops served in advise and assist roles to build capacity within Iraq's army, police force, and to mature the rule of law. These two operations were some of the largest undertaken by our United States Armed Forces, and we accomplished a very strategic and important mission, both for our nation and obviously for the free world. That mission didn't come without a cost. A total of 32,000 plus service members were wounded during Operation Iraqi Freedom and another 300 plus during Operation New Dawn. 4,487 of our country's sons and daughters were killed in action by our enemies. Our state of Florida suffered the third most casualties of any state in the Union. 192 killed during Operation Iraqi Freedom and 4 killed during Operation New Dawn. It's clear that Florida and Hillsborough County know that freedom is not easily won, that it takes blood, sweat, tears to end an age of tyranny and evil. To those who lost their loved ones in Iraq, you have my deepest sympathy and my undying respect for what you have endured. For many of us here today, the nation of Iraq has been a part of our lives since the early 90s, when we first defeated Saddam's army and freed the peoples of Kuwait from tyranny. The no-fly zones that we patrolled to keep the Shia South and the Kurdish North free from Saddam's tampering, their dramatic 3-week attack up the river that thoroughly defeated Saddam's military in early 2003, followed by one of the most ruthless counterinsurgency operations that our military has ever undertaken. To the coalescing of our enemies in the Arab awakening, to the first elections and the granting of sovereignty to the Iraqi government a couple of years after that, all the way to our final relief in place. And I say again, our relief in place, where those Iraqi forces that we successfully trained and equipped and mentored, which allowed our forces to come home. This is easy, real easy to talk about here stateside, but the heavy lifting of our sons and daughters, what they did in Iraq, is quite extraordinary, to say the least. Yes, we could debate all day about weapons of mass destruction. We could debate the blood and treasure our nation sacrificed in this campaign. But I'll tell you, when you fight side by side with an Iraqi sergeant major from Kurdistan who lost 80% of his family to Saddam's chemical attack on the village of Halabja, or when you have former enemies, ruthless enemies, take up arms now alongside of you to continue our quest for peace and security, when you have village elders, tribal chiefs, and government officials tell you, hey, you know, in a matter-of-fact tone, that you Americans treat us better than we Iraqis treat each other, well, I personally have no second thoughts about our mission and intent. When our fellow Americans come up with this expression of, I support the troops but not the war, and the political bickering that went on, as we Americans obviously celebrate our freedoms, but personally on the ground here in Iraq, to watch our sons and daughters go about their mission, risking all, hearing and seeing this throughout their tour, that continually confirms to me why our military is the most respected entity in these United States. Thank you.
Well, I travel the world, leave behind my home, move across the ocean, face the great unknown, and I will forge ahead. I'll fight to the death. I will risk it all. I'll give my last breath. I say bye to my friends and love the wife, and I will risk it all, and I will sacrifice, defend you from sea to shine and see. Thank you for my freedom, Miss Liberty. Yep.
This is a magnificent memorial. And when I look at it and memories come flooding back to me, so many of us who had the honor and privilege of serving with our armed forces in those early days throughout what turned into be a 10-year conflict in Iraq, all of us who lost comrades, friends, and so many others killed and wounded for an incredibly important effort. This memorial actually is deeply rooted in our history, both history in the United States, but in the history of mankind. I mean, the idea of a culture coming together to build a commemorative thing, a memorial or a monument in honor of its fallen, goes back to the ancient Greeks, to Athens. And it's very fashionable in American military history and military culture today to focus on the Spartans, and understandably so. Incredible warrior culture, dedicated to one thing and one thing only, primarily as a culture, and that was to put the most capable military force on the battlefield. And so it's a natural magnet there for American military men, particularly in our community, to be drawn to the Spartans. But the truth of the matter is we have much more in common with the Athenians. a Republican democracy whose men who filled the ranks of their armies came from normal life by and large, much as the great men and women of our military come from normal life. And in that way, they had, in a way, much more to sacrifice. And if you've ever read Pericles' funeral oration, I commend it to you, he speaks about that unique sacrifice of men and women who had everything to lose. That made them different than the Spartans, who had already kind of committed themselves to a lifetime of hard service where you could expect an end to come in combat. Those citizens of Athens who went to war to preserve their city-state had everything to lose. And Pericles, and I think appropriate for today, highlights that particular unique commitment for men and women who, despite having much to lose, feared losing their honor more and went forward at the behest of their country to serve its nation. That's exactly what our brothers here on this monument to my rear did for us. Abraham Lincoln said much the same thing in his famous Gettysburg Address when he talks about a ground that was impossible to consecrate further because it had already been so greatly consecrated by the sacrifice, the blood of those who fell at that climatic battle in July of 1863. That's what this memorial here does for us. It causes us, it will cause our children and their children in this great state of Florida who hopefully will come by here and look at what freedom means, what it takes to secure the cost of freedom, because it does indeed come with extraordinary sacrifice. And to reflect on that, and this memorial, this magnificent structure here, will do exactly that. And that's the purpose behind these great and noteworthy endeavors, which is why it is so important that we commend those who brought this about, because without it, we forget. Without such monuments, we will forget what that cost is. So these nearly 200 brothers, sons, fathers of Florida who went forward under the colors of their country to serve this great country in ancient Mesopotamia, moved forward into the country of Iraq, did that willingly. And we know all of them, but without knowing any of them, we know all of them, because we've served alongside these great men and women, and we know what they did on behalf of this great country willingly, with much to lose, and yet went forth anyway. I would offer to you that in addition to remembering what their service and their sacrifice was, a sacrifice that continues with the families of our fallen, I would also offer that it is also a charge to each and every one of us. Because candidly, it's not enough just to come here and remember. It's important, but it is not enough. What their duty and what their sacrifice cries out to us to do is to be worthy of that sacrifice. It cries out to us to make sure no matter where we are in life, at the early, at the end, civilian, retiree, serving veteran, serving soldiers, airman, sailor, Marine, Coast Guardsman, they call to us to make sure that we continue to live our lives to make it worthy of their sacrifice. That's what makes what they did valuable, is our continued service. We who still walk the earth, serving our city, our families, our community, our country, in whatever aspect it is, that we continue to make a difference and remind ourselves that we have a debt. We have a debt to these great men and their brothers and sisters from across this great land who went forward into our fights as their country asked them to do, and gave all. So I would ask you, as we leave here today, certainly honoring their sacrifice, certainly remembering the sacrifice that endures with their families, that we also have a brick in our rucksack, an obligation of our own to go forward as Americans, as citizens of this great country, as citizens of the preeminent example of Republican democracy, to do our part, whatever that is. That's how we make their sacrifice continue to be worthy. Please keep in mind, as Sergeant Major had mentioned, that as we have the privilege and honor of being here today on this wonderful Saturday in the Christmas season, remember that we have many thousands of our sons and daughters, brothers and sisters in harm's way. Keep them in your thoughts and prayers, if you would. Remember those great wounded warriors who struggle to regain a new normal life, a challenge that will endure throughout their life, and their families. And always keep in mind our fallen warriors and their families. For our veterans out there, thank you for what you have done. Whatever conflict, whatever period of service you serve our nation, thank you for your service. We follow and walk in your footsteps. And I want to please.
It's a privilege to help create a memorial to honor the memory of Florida's 190 fallen who didn't make it home. I'm especially grateful to have a place to reflect on the personal losses of Brad Clemens, Keith Fiskus, Kermit Evans, Dan Miller, Tim Weiner, and Liz Lunke. Another brave soul I'm grateful to honor in this memorial is Jason DeFron, who died on Christmas Day from a detonated roadside bomb. Jason left behind a wife, daughter, and his son, who was born while he was deployed. Jaden is 7 years old now, and he never met his father. Each of the names in the memorial has their own story, and loved ones who miss them dearly. We owe it to our fallen and to their families to always remember their sacrifices. Thank you, General Mulholland, Mrs. Mulholland, Command Sergeant Major Grippe, Chaplain Kennedy, Board of Commissioners, Mr. Merrill, our Gold Star and Blue Star families, and to everyone who participated in this ceremony. Thank you to all our distinguished guests, and to each of you for taking time to attend the Iraq Veterans Memorial dedication. Special thanks to my parents, brother, family, and Jason Wyatt, and all of our out-of-town guests who traveled near and far to honor our fallen and celebrate this community achievement. On behalf of fellow Iraq War veterans, the Iraq Veterans Memorial Committee wishes to thank Hillsborough County Board of County Commissioners for dedicating land and resources to honor our military, veterans, and fallen. Special thanks to our Veterans Memorial Park Committee for being an inspiration to future generations, such as the Cub Scouts and Junior ROTC that you see here today. And for your tireless efforts to establish this world-class park for all of us to enjoy.
For more news and information, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, or watch us on YouTube. This program was brought to you by Hillsborough Television. Visit our website at htvonline.org.